In 1970, a young woman named Sandra Major was brutally murdered in Ohio. Her killer vanished. The case went cold. For more than 50 years, there were no arrests, no answers, and no justice. Then in 2022, one piece of evidence spoke again. This is the story of Sandra Major, and how time finally caught up with her killer. Sandra Major was a young woman with her whole life ahead of her. She lived in Ohio during a time when the country was changing fast, but safety for women lagged behind. Friends described Sandra as quiet, polite, and dependable. She worked hard, kept to herself, and trusted people more than she should have. Like many women in 1970, Sandra believed that if she followed the rules, worked honestly, stayed cautious, avoided trouble, nothing terrible would happen. She was wrong. In 1970, Sandra Major went about her normal routine. She was last seen alive in Ohio, near familiar streets she knew well. She never made it home. When Sandra failed to show up, concern slowly turned into panic. Friend called. Family searched. Hours passed, then days. And then came the call no family ever wants to receive. Sandra Major's body was discovered in a remote area in Ohio. She had been sexually assaulted and murdered. The crime scene told investigators one clear truth. This was not an accident. This was personal, and this was violent. The killer had taken his time. He believed he would never be identified. And for decades, he was right. Ohio law enforcement launched a full investigation. They interviewed witnesses. They questioned men who lived or worked near the area. They collected physical evidence, limited by the technology of the time. In 1970, DNA testing didn't exist. Evidence that today would solve a case in weeks was useless back then. Investigators did what they could, but leads dried up, and slowly, the case went cold. Sandra Major's case became another folder on a shelf, another victim without justice. Detectives retired. Witnesses moved away or died. Memories faded. But one thing remained locked away in evidence storage: biological material from the crime scene. At the time, no one knew it would one day be the key. Years turned into decades. Sandra's family aged without answers. Her killer lived freely, working, socializing, blending into society. He never confessed, never turned himself in, never faced consequences. The world moved on, but the evidence waited. By the early 2000s, forensic science had changed everything. Cold case units began reopening unsolved murders. Old evidence was retested. DNA databases expanded. Eventually, Sandra Major's case was reviewed again. And this time, investigators had something they didn't have in 1970: genetic truth. Advanced DNA testing was performed on preserved evidence from Sandra Major's murder. The profile was uploaded and compared. Then, a match appeared, not directly to the killer, but to a family line. Investigators used genealogy, building family trees backward, generation by generation. Slowly, one name began to stand out. The investigation led to Joseph Kenneth Fritts. He had lived in Ohio at the time of Sandra Major's murder. He was the right age. He had access, and his DNA matched the crime scene. Joseph Kenneth Fritts had never been a suspect in 1970, but science had no doubts. In 2022, more than 52 years after the murder, Joseph Kenneth Fritts was arrested. At the time of his arrest, he was an elderly man, but age did not erase guilt. He was charged with the rape and murder of Sandra Major. For the first time since 1970, Sandra's name was spoken in a courtroom. When confronted with the evidence, Joseph Kenneth Fritts confessed. He admitted to killing Sandra Major. For decades, he had carried the truth and said nothing. Joseph Kenneth Fritts was convicted. He would spend the rest of his life known for one thing: the murder of Sandra Major. No sentence could return what was taken. But justice, delayed for half a century, had finally arrived. Sandra Major's case proves something important. Time does not protect killers. Technology evolves. Truth waits. Even after 50 years, justice can still knock. Sandra Major was more than a cold case number. She was a daughter, a friend, A life interrupted. Her killer believed time would erase his crime. He was wrong. If this story stayed with you, support Truth Trove Stories by liking and subscribing. And tell us in the comments, do you think every cold case will one day be solved? Because as Sandra Major's case shows, the past never truly stays buried.